Our next speaker, I was invited, thanks to Mark Braun, I was invited to speak at a printing conference on continuous improvement down in Dallas earlier in April. And our next speaker was the keynote speaker. He worked for Toyota from a young age for 13 years and now is out on his own. His presentation was really overwhelming to me to sit there and watch, and thought, boy, this is something that I think really matches up with what our group is doing, and thought it'd be a good presentation for all of you to see. So I'd like to welcome Sam Obara to the stage.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. Yes, I started with Toyota when I was 17 years old, and then they sent me to college and then to Japan, and lived in Toyota City for a while. And I wanted to just concisely show you and share with you a few things that I learned when I was there. And after 13 years with Toyota, we are still working. Honsha.org is an alumni association of former Toyota people. We still work with Toyota. And in fact, I just came back from a Toyota facility. We train all their suppliers at Toyota's request. But Honsha is a Japanese for headquarters, and .org, because part of our revenues, they go towards some humanitarian efforts, and 100% of the sale of our book, Toyota by Toyota, they go towards some of those causes too. Well, we want to discuss a little bit about habits, and one thing we may need to use is a good example of what can be a habit. For example, if I ask you, do you practice Kaizen consistently? Probably most of you will say yes, but we are talking about naturally. Do you do that naturally? So let me use one example so you can see where you are in this range. So here it says in the red letters here, before my Kaizen, I had to type 6 digits. But after my Kaizen, I found a way to type only 4 and still get the same results. The effects of my Kaizen is that I eliminated 3 different types of the 7 wastes. And one of them is the overprocessing, or doing anything more than what customers are willing to pay for. Second is eliminating the waste of motion. In 2 digits, I'm not going to type anymore. Maybe it's a second savings. And third is a waste of correction. In 2 digits, I'm not typing, so I cannot make mistakes. And that is what they call Kaizen. They call it Kaizen Teian in Toyota. That's the concept of Kaizen. It's very different from what we see nowadays as the weak Kaizen or the blitz Kaizen. So this is what we are going to use as a backdrop. Do you do that? Do you practice that naturally? And if not, I just wanted to show you a few ways if you want to keep that as a habit. You might be able to. According to the American Journal of Psychology, new behaviors can become automatic through a process. It's a process called habit formation. So it changes the neuroplasticity in your brain. But there's one thing that you know already: old habits are hard to lose, hard to break, very tough. But new habits are also hard to form. But when we talk about habits, you remember those monkeys, right? They say new habits, old habits they die hard, but take a look at new ones too. Before we had the one that didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, didn't say anything. Today, the millenniums, the centennials, now there's a fourth one, the one that doesn't see, hear, or say anything. It's a combination, all of them. It's this one here. Do you identify? Okay. Well, let's talk about some habits. You probably have some of them. Maybe you're going to want to acquire some others and lose some. The same journal was talking about this process of habit formation, how difficult it is. But the good news is that automaticity, according to their studies, they were reached in as short as 18 days. So you don't have to remind yourself anymore. It becomes automatic. But at the same time, the average was 66 days. 66 days, 2 months. Wouldn't you like to acquire a new habit if it's a good one? And invest 2 months to make it a habit? And the same way, wouldn't you like to lose a bad habit in 2 months? That's all it takes, according to this study. So let me share a few ways to create habits here. And one, leaders, especially leaders in a lean company, they need to create this lean awareness or changing the way their people think. It was very interesting when I read this article that really established the odds that lean will not work in your organization. So what are the odds? Well, according to the article, and I teach for San Diego State University, according to this Industry Week survey, they noticed that only 2% of the companies that are trying to implement TPS or lean, they succeed. And even though they say they succeed, they actually reach their expected results. That's not even equal to reaching a successful implementation. But at least they meet what they were expecting. That means that 433 companies, we're talking about only 7 reached that mark. And if we have half of that number here, that means maybe we have half of the success rate here. Maybe only 3 companies here. One over there, one here, maybe one over there. Everybody else is going to fail. Or we all think that, no, we are different, we are better. Because all those companies that were trying to succeed, they were at the same time thinking like you guys. No, we are better, we can do it. But 426 of them failed. And my guess is that they were all very serious about reaching that. But how can they fail if Toyota is today one of the most studied companies in the world? There are more books written about Toyota and workshops and seminars, summits, great summits, conferences, university degrees that now include the Toyota productions. How can people still fail? Now, besides all those books written about Toyota, today we have a flood of articles talking about why lean fails so often. The top 10 reasons why lean manufacturing fails. Or why a lean program fails while Toyota succeeds. And why 2% only success. And there's one article that was interesting that was on Industry Week talking about this. Lean is about people, and you guys know that really well. But it says that leaders, like us here, we fail in leading the change in the culture. That's where we are failing. And 2, 3, 5 years down the road, then when we fail, we think it's, oh, that tool doesn't apply. So I wanted to just challenge you to see if you're really ready, if you're part of that 2% that's going to succeed, or you're part of the 98% who is leading your company to failure. Let's see if you can change the way you think. And think about the 7 types of waste. How do you tackle that? When you see things like this, it's an opportunity in your company. Are all your people already thinking, like, where are those wastes? I can find 3. Or they are all thinking like that. Saving 1 second, who cares? We're pretty big. Do we really need to do that? Because Toyota, when they were a $30 billion company, they were posting those posters of the lady eliminating 2 digits in all public places. Parking lots, cafeterias, meeting rooms, elevators. $30 billion company trying to make sure everybody understands the importance of eliminating 1 second. And here's the place for a question. How many of you think that Toyota was crazy back then? We're talking about 3 decades ago. They say, and eliminate that 1 digit, 2 digits, 1 second. Who thinks, oh, that's an overkill? I don't agree at all. That's crazy. Nobody. And so everybody agrees. Excellent. Does everybody do that? One person. Very good. There's one person. I was expecting 3. That's okay. Maybe this group is a little, but let's think about that. Whenever we think that, oh yes, I agree, that makes sense, that's elimination of waste, this is the way to go, that's lean. Yes, I totally agree. Do you do it? No, not yet. Maybe tomorrow. Remember that slogan from Nike, just do it? They have another one, that big one in New York, that poster that says what? You remember? Yesterday, you said tomorrow. So think about that, because maybe the topic of today is, when are you going to start? And maybe some of you are thinking, yes, I will, I agree, yes, we don't do it now. One person does it, by the way. But you're thinking, yes, I'll do it. Yeah, tomorrow. And that's exactly what we are talking about. Are you going to make this a habit, or you're going to make this another concept that's going to get absorbed in your brain but will never leave? So instead of asking, why would a $30 billion company need to save 1 second? Why don't we think, why should any company at all need to waste an extra second? But you know, it's so difficult to start thinking like that. You saw it's 66 days. We're talking about 2 months of forcing yourselves into that thinking. So it becomes automatic. Automaticity can be reached in 66 days. But you know what's even more difficult than thinking like this? There's one thing more difficult, and that is not thinking like this. Stop thinking like, why should I do that? It's only 1 second. It's only 1 minute. It's only $1. Shouldn't I look at something better, bigger, more impactful? Because this here is nothing. This is 2 digits. Who cares? But if we are leaders, we have to make sure everybody can think like that. And there's only one way that others will think like that, and that is if they see that you think like that. So another test. You know, when I was living in Japan, I lived 3 years in Toyota City. And that's my dorm. I mean, the bathroom in my dorm. And you know that Japan is a country 25 times smaller than the US. It's the size of the state of Montana. If you discount for all the volcanoes, we're talking about more than 100 active volcanoes. If you discount for the tea plantation, the rice fields, one of the densest populations in the world. Productive land in Japan is the size of the state of Connecticut. No wonder bathrooms are very small. But did you notice one thing besides the size of the bathroom? In my dorm, the bathrooms, it was a Toyota dorm, and we had this little faucet right behind the toilet. You know what that is for? Whenever you flush, instead of the water going inside the tank here, it will go through this little faucet that gives you an opportunity to wash your hands before it goes to the tank. So your next flush will flush with that water that you just washed your hands with. Yes, because Japan is so small, they cannot have a sink outside. No, they can. In my dorm, they had that and a sink outside if you needed to wash your hands. So that's not the case. The case is, well, if we can wash our hands there, we are going to save 1 gallon of water in the faucet. Does that make sense? Do you do that? No, forget it. We don't even have that system here, right? But here it is. Forward about 30 years since I lived in that dorm, they still have that type of toilet. It's not something that they needed to save water 30 years ago, but today they don't need to anymore. And even now it's a little bit better. You see that the seat here? Have you ever seen a Japanese toilet seat? Yeah. Oh, some people. You guys like it? Yes, for those who don't know, that seat can do anything you can think of. And a couple things you can't. But no, that's not because the Japanese, they need to save water, they don't have money. Actually, if you go to Japan now, you're gonna notice one thing. They spend over $1,000 in some toilet seats. They're not trying to save $1 over there to spend $1,000 in a toilet seat. Isn't that amazing? And these toilets, if you see, some of them are made by whom? Yes, Toshiba, Panasonic. The companies that make the Ultra LED, 4K, top of the line TVs and toilet seats. They make the best laptops. I guess they want to take care of your lap bottom too. But why is that those companies get into this type of business? Well, of course, they get into this type of business for at least two reasons. Number one, and number two. Of course, there are more reasons. But if we start thinking, why is that this is happening? And our thinking is, do they really need to save 1 gallon of water? Do the Japanese need to do that? They are the third largest economy in the world. Why can't we think, why should anyone waste an extra gallon? Can't we change the way we think? Because that's tough enough already. We're talking about 2 months to change the way we think and make it automatic, natural. But again, it's even more difficult to stop thinking like that. And if you cannot change the way you think, forget about changing the way other people think, which should be the role of the leader, no? Leadership is the ability of influencing others. And we can't influence really well when we don't believe what we are saying or what we are doing. So part of this test is, are you capable of changing the way you think? Because if you say, yes, I agree with everything, but I still do the same way, that means you cannot change the way you think. Therefore, you won't change the way others think. Therefore, you are in the 98%, which probably, according to statistics, chances are many of us are. A very good example I saw when we bring people to Japan 3 times a year, and this last time we had a pleasant explanation from Ishigaki-san, a former Toyota sensei. He was my sensei when I lived in Toyota City many years ago, and he was raising this envelope and talking about this is a supplier's envelope. And in Toyota, all the internal mail, we do it inside, we do it with supplier's envelope, used envelopes. We just take what is inside and we put our stuff and we just use that for internal mail for months until we can't anymore. And we had people from South Africa, from Eastern Europe, from all places in Asia and South America, and a lot of people from here, a lot of government people from here. And they were all scratching their heads and thinking, well, can't Toyota just buy envelopes? Come on, it's a 1 cent an envelope. Can't they just use that money? They're a $300 billion company. Why would a $300 billion company need to save 1 cent? Come on, that's an overkill. And again, what is the right way of thinking? Why should any company need to waste an extra second? Isn't it difficult to think like that? And again, it's even more difficult to stop thinking like this. But it's human nature. The ability comes when we repeat that over and over. So maybe you already know your answer. I can change the way I think, but I cannot influence other people. I may be able to change the way I think, but I still want to do the same way that you said, I agree with that. 1 second, do you do it? Well, tomorrow. We will start tomorrow. Because if you can if you can change the way you think, you may change the way others think. But reality is, if you cannot change the way you think, you definitely won't change the way others think. So there's no guarantees that by you changing the way you think, you'll be able to be successful. But there is a guarantee. If you don't change, nobody will. This is what we call creating awareness. We have to get to the habit. As lean leaders, if we don't acquire that important habit, nobody else will have the awareness that you might have. There's the second one here, which is they set standards and create structure. What are standards and structure? Well, I don't know if you've been to some other countries less developed than what you're used to, but you will see that a place with no signs, no traffic lights, no lanes on the road, they are extremely difficult for you to create the right behavior, to walk or to drive without accident, to cross lanes, to drive at the same speed, to get to your point B. It's extremely difficult. Creating some structure will help drive behavior. And of course, we are talking about good structure because there are bad structure too. Sometimes you have so much because you heard or you read that, oh, Toyota uses Kanban. Oh, I want to do that too. How do I do it? And we forget how bad Kanban is. Oh, but that's the most studied tool in Toyota, in the Toyota toolbox. Must be good. While inside Toyota, they are talking about how can we get rid of Kanban? That's the worst thing that can happen. Yes, of course, they use Kanbans. But the only reason why they do that is to connect processes. And in most cases, we find out processes can be connected physically instead of via Kanban that many people use. That's a big medicine that they use. And of course, medicine we only take when we are sick. Many times we are not. We don't need to take that. So what kind of processes and structure and standards we are talking about so you can create that behavior that you want? You know, something that people ask a lot when we bring in to Toyota is when they go see, for example, a parts sorting lane, and they see on the ceiling, they see those signs there, and they get closer and they say, well, what are these? Yes, it's 7:16. They need to get there, the forklift truck at 7:16 and leave at 7:23. And here it's 8:31 and or 6:31 and leave at 7:22. They know exactly what time they arrive, what time they leave. They have that structure that shows exactly what time each one of the operators needs to be in each one of the processes. How many seconds it takes, and if they are 1 second behind, that's great. They celebrate that opportunity to solve that one problem and never be that 1 second late, ever again. And they understand how many people would need to be there for that takt time of 144 seconds per car, in this case, without bumping into each other, without having to wait for the process to be done. They understand exactly when a machine goes down, if they have to call somebody from quality, from process, from maintenance, who needs to be there and at what time, and what each one of those 20-something operators, what they need to do at every single second. And if they are running behind, if that's by design, what kind of the other tasks that can be attributed to another process that has less capacity, or it has less demand, or more capacity. They know exactly what happens when the yellow light blinks, or the white light blinks. So when we talk about creating this structure, sometimes it is the structure that will drive behavior, that will drive the change in culture. Yeah, but we want to be very happy, and so we bring everybody and we motivate them. Motivation goes up only so far. Sometimes we have to create the lanes, the signs, the structure, the traffic lights, so everybody knows how to behave. The last one here is that they ensure compliance. And compliance allows for ownership. Now, how many times you've seen companies that people are working right under a sign like that, but they are not wearing safety glasses? And I was in one many years ago, people were not wearing the safety goggles, and I confronted senior management, I said, isn't the sign there supposed to be followed? Yes, they are, and people are not, but we tell them they must. And what happens if they don't? Yes, people complain, they're not comfortable wearing safety goggles. And what happens? What is the consequence if they don't? Well, we tell them. You already told me you tell them. What are the consequences? So it's an option thing. It's optional or it's required? No, it's required. So how come people are not wearing those? Well, some people are really stubborn. So don't you care about the well-being of your people? It's their eyesight. It's what's going to let them work. It's that's going to create wealth for their family, bring food, education, health, and everything else. Don't you care about that? Yes, but some people just don't want. This is a great test, because if this is the case in your organization, that is pretty much a good indicator. It's going to fail in your company. You are part of the 98%, the great majority, that's going to fail. If you cannot ensure that, which is the least we can do, it's equal to 5S. We cannot ensure 5S, it doesn't stick here. Then forget about doing anything else. Oh, let's go to another seminar because they are teaching so many great things. How about the first steps? Now, first step is really tough. This is a Toyota facility and here in the US. And when people see that, they say, oh, that's how they do 5S. Well, in Toyota, they call it 4S's. Oh, so it's those tapes that will allow the janitor to put the things back exactly where they belong. It's so they can cut some of the waste. And they start putting tape on the floor. And I was in a company some time ago, and they said, it's a top-notch, world-class company, and they said, you will see a lot of vestiges of 5S in our company. Take a look at this. And I saw, yes, but what does that tell you? Well, it's just not being sustained. And by walking the floor, I saw many other vestiges. And they were not of 5S. They were of no S at all. And we were talking about what is the purpose of that? If you don't understand the purpose, you probably will be taping the floor the rest of your lives. And that is simply the purpose of 4S's, which is 5, and some companies use 6 or more. It's to see waste, make waste more visible, make normal stand out from abnormal, and vice versa. Make that visible. And if we cannot do that, then we are missing out on a very big part of our leadership role. How many of you guys heard of this new car that doesn't need any maintenance? It's maintenance-free, it's scratch-free, you don't have to change oil, you don't have to, you can even bump into other cars lightly. You can go 100% or 100 miles an hour over potholes and never brakes. You guys saw that, right? For those who never. Of course, I'm talking about the rental car. Of course you know that. That's the car you don't need to wash. That's the car that doesn't belong to nobody. That's the car nobody takes care of. Now we are talking about that attitude in a lot of not only leaders but employees too. People who come to work and they think that this my boss doesn't take care of me. They just, I just come work without my safety goggles, the way I want. 5S, well, I don't care much. Nobody's going to keep me accountable. And they start thinking, my boss, I think he or she thinks I'm a rented pair of hands. I'm a rented labor. So I'm going to treat my colleagues as rental colleagues. My process as rental processes. My company is a rental company. My boss uses me as a rental pair of hands. Why should I care about this rented company anyway? And then we complain that it doesn't stick. It doesn't sustain. Where does it come from? Maybe it's leadership, it's our attitude. Maybe we're not giving them what we want. I thought it was a great example here. If you have 12 kids and you ensure that they follow your standards, I think they will pretty much one time, it's going to come to a day they will know, hey, Daddy's going to keep us accountable. It's better to do it. Rather than, hey, I already told you what to do, and you're not doing. Okay, I already told you. And you turn your back, then chances are you will not get the results you want, because you get what you expect, not what you expect. And maybe you already have this down, maybe not, but I was telling you I'm going to just share with you the habits of a leader. And these are not the habits. This is what we call a checklist. Checklist is something you carry in your pocket. So you can look at it every time and remind yourselves. Now you want to make this a habit. You need to practice that relentlessly. And you can do that over 66 days, 2 months. That's what it takes. And you start doing that. Oh, but that's the exhausted list. No, there's many more habits. We just don't have time today to cover all of them. But at least these first 3 ones, if you get them ready, that will show you have great chances of getting into that 2% group that will be successful. Now, how to make this a habit? Well, here's one way. Harvard Business School did a research, and the study showed that there is a way that if we keep repeating things, repeating, we can change the way we think. It changes it to what they call the neuroplasticity. And the repetition is it looks like they are even repeating the word. But remember that Chinese philosopher. What's the name of? Very good, thank you. Bruce Lee. So, that's what you said? Yeah, no? Okay. Yes. He said, I fear the man who has practiced, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. You know why? There's something in Japanese called kata. And kata means you repeat some movements over and over, exhaustively. So there's a point in time you do it naturally. You don't think. My I have twin boys. When they were 4 years old, we put them into karate school. And the karate class, they started with the kata, which is a series of movement. And the sensei, the teacher, he teaches you, oh, this is the right stance, this is the right angle, this is the right motion, and the right speed, so you can deflect your opponent's attack. And you have to repeat. And when you're doing kata many, many times, it gets natural. But they were only 4 years old. They were not really into karate. Well, we enrolled them in karate just so they could defend themselves from each other. And then you probably have that same problem, right? Too many kids. And then when they were in the middle of the kata, whenever they stopped to think, should I turn left or right? They wouldn't say that, but they stopped. And that fraction of a second, they stopped, the sensei would come with this big bamboo stick and hit them on the head. It didn't hurt. It was more of the noise. And say, hey, stop thinking. What are you doing? When you stop to think, that's when your opponent is going to win the match. It's going to get you down. And kata was created in Japan, in Okinawa, little island in Japan, in the 11th century. And that was a means for the Japanese to defend themselves from attacks or to hunt. So it was a very choreographed way of establishing the motions. So whenever somebody would attack you, you already reacted in that way without having to think. That would give you an edge. And he is saying 10,000 times. Do you really want to acquire that? Do it. But repeat that 10,000 times. So I just wanted to finish with a question for you. Before my Kaizen, I had people passing by, and some people would hit their heads on this open key box. After my Kaizen, I just inclined that key box just a little bit to this angle, so gravity would shut the door. What do you think about that? How many of you make a point, or it's already your habit? You naturally do one Kaizen, two, maybe more, per day, every single day, because you're going to feel, I'm cheating myself, I'm cheating the company if I go home without working or doing Kaizens, which is the same thing. How many of you do that every single day? It's your habit. One person. Just one person. Okay. Well, let me change the question then. The question now is, how many of you, if the lady is injured, she hit her head, she's on the floor, blood everywhere, how many of you would stop and help that lady? Anybody? Oh, a lot more people would, except for those guys. Well, why not? Yeah, you. Just kidding. You guys will help too, right? Okay. Well, isn't that weird? You don't stop to prevent. You don't do anything to prevent the problem from happening. But all of you said, now, if the problem is schedule itself, then I'll stop and do it. So you already know that to do some Kaizen like this, you're going to spend maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Now, to take the girl to the hospital, it might take us 30 minutes, an hour. If you live in San Diego, it's probably more than that. If you have to take 91, it's the whole day. So what means is, you do have the time. Because everybody said, yeah, of course I would. What you don't have is called priority. Priority is very different from time, because if you have the priority to do your Kaizens, then you are going to make the time to do that. But of course, it's not in your nature. And I don't even know if you want that to be in your nature, if you want to do that naturally. Maybe not. But then you have to accept you are in the 98% who's going to fail. Just simple like that. And now I can see a lot of people very depressed. Guys, it's not the end of the world. We can always start. But the thing is, it cannot be tomorrow anymore. As leaders, we have to sit in the front seat, the driver's seat. Nobody drives a car from the back seat. And from what I heard, this is a very select group of people. I got a briefing before that this year is not open to the public. Very rare that I meet a group that is so select. And you're part of this group that can show, hey, 90% of this group is going to fail. Or you can show the world, hey, this is a group of serious, committed people who's going to succeed. And we're going to defy those odds. That's all up to the group. And I just wanted to finalize. This is probably one of my favorite slides because did you see the difference between before and after the Kaizen? Look, after the Kaizen, the guard, he learned how to speak English. See? Isn't that amazing? All right. So that's my time for today. I really appreciate your attention to this matter. Hopefully we will see some seeds, some fruits from the time we were spending here today. Thank you. Thank you.
So questions for Sam. Everybody's scared to ask. Yes, sir. Robert or Richard. Can we get a microphone to him right there?
In that last slide, why did he not leave it straight and just take the door off?
Yes, there's no explanation for that, but that could be another one. And I don't know if it's just to protect from dust or anything else, but it was a series. That cartoon and the first one I showed with the lady illuminating digits is from a series of posters that Toyota was posting in all public places to create awareness.
After seeing your slide with safety glasses, I have to ask, after going to Japan twice, I always found it very curious that we had to wear a baseball cap on a tour, but no safety glasses or hard hat, and I'm just very curious about that. I'd like to know more how the safety standards are different between the two countries.
Yes. You know, when we visit companies in Japan, there's sometimes the mistaken notion that Japan is a lean country. Actually, when Jim Womack went to Japan and tried to find out what is this leading edge concept that Japan has, he found out, no, it's not Japan, it's Toyota. And he found out Toyota is so different from other car companies that sometimes we equate companies that we go to Japan and visit as, well, they don't seem too lean. But in Toyota, they do use some of those baseball caps. And it's mostly for identification to see sometimes who is the supervisor, team leader, group leader, who is the visitors, rather than protection. Now, safety goggles in any place where there's a risk of damaging your eyes, they are mandatory. Yes, thank you.
Other
right,
questions?
So you showed the picture of the safety glasses warning sign, and you were talking about how just having the picture doesn't mean people are going to wear them. It doesn't really do anything. But then Toyota, they post these Kaizen pictures to create awareness. Do you think that works, and why is it different?
Well, they're creating the awareness and doing the enforcement of that. So that's the difference between, if we ensure a standard, we have to create compliance, making sure that people are really doing. When I was in Toyota, I was 17, I was very, very naive and young, and we had to do 5 Kaizens every single day. Report every single morning the 5 Kaizens that you did the day before. So for me, it was a no-brainer. What is a Kaizen? What are the 7 ways? Oh, we have so many of them. And when I got to the US, I immigrated about 23 years ago. And the first time I heard, and it was a senior executive saying, yes, we do Kaizens. And we're going to do one next March. I said, what do you mean, next one? How many you're going to do today? Not until next. Yes, because next March there's going to be a team here in that one corner with that one project in that 1 week. Hey, if Kaizen is for us to eliminate waste, and waste is not eventual, how can you eliminate waste with an event, Kaizen? So that's where then I learned a few other things that sometimes we do it because here in America, people like the home runs. And people explain that to me better, but that doesn't replace the need to do the Kaizen Teian, the cultural Kaizen. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you.